Good day, everyone. Praised be Jesus and Mary. In today's discussion, we will be tackling about the learning resources and the instructional accommodation. But before we proceed, let us meet first our group. First is I am Christine Rose Agcopra. Another member is Angel Bangod. And lastly, we have Heaven 8th Bacarisas. We are all third year college students pursuing Bachelor of Secondary Education, majoring in Filipino. So for our objectives, at the end of the lesson, we will be able to identify the state of special education and inclusion programs in the Philippines. And second is we will be able to recognize the concept of special education and inclusion programs. And lastly, we will be able to learn the indigenization and contextualization of the curriculum. So let's proceed for the discussion. So, what is special education programs? Special education refers to a range of services that can be provided in different ways and in different settings. There's no one size fits all approach to special education. It's tailored to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Special education focuses on helping kids with special needs to learn, but it doesn't mean that placing kids in a special classroom all day long. So in fact, federal law says that kids that get special education services should learn in the same classroom as other kids as much as possible. So this is known as least restrictive environment, or LRE. So what is special education programs? Special education programs are intended for students who are cognitively, physically, socially, or emotionally delayed. So this type of delay, or also known as developmental delay, refers to the aspect of child's overall development. So when we say development, it incorporates physical, cognitive, and scholastic skills. That puts them behind their fears, and students' needs cannot be met in the traditional classroom settings due to special requirements or due to the developmental delay. So, special education programs and services modifies content, teaching, methodology, and delivery of instruction to meet the specific needs of these students. So, these services are provided no cost to the family and will be able for children until the age of 21. So, special education programs are designed to meet the specific and unique instructional needs of each child, allowing students to be grouped homogeneously by development stage or ability rather than by age. So this unique aspect of special education allowing educators to provide aid of instruction based on the child's interest and ability rather than the biological age. Now let us proceed to the historical background of special education. As you can see, there are three people, and that three people have great impact on special education during the early society. So although there is isolated example of caring for and treating disabled individuals in ancient Greece and Rome, early societies typically shunned people who differed from the norm. During the Middle Ages, the churches became the first institution to provide care for physically and mentally impaired people. But the development of technique associated with special education did not merge until the Renaissance, with its emphasis on human dignity. In the mid 1500s, Pedro Ponce de Leon succeeded in teaching the deaf pupils in Spain to speak, read, and write. It is assumed that his methods were followed by Juan Pablo Bonet, who in 1620 published the first book on the subject. So this gave the rise wider the European interest in education of deaf individual, and no serious attempt was made to educate or to train the persons with visual impairments, however, until the 18th century. Scientific attempts to educate children with intellectual disabilities originated in the efforts of Jean-Marc Gaspard Ettard, a French physician and otologist. In his classic book, The Wild Boy of Aberon in 1807, he related his 5-year efforts to train or educate a boy who had been found running wild in woods of Aberon. Itard's work with the boy who became notable for the possibilities with the rise of regarding the education of person with mental or emotional disability. So now let us discuss the special education during the 20th century. So special education for people with disabilities became universal in developed countries by the late 20th century. Concurrent with this development was the identification of two concepts of individual differences. First is the inter-individual differences, which compares one child with another. And second, the intra-individual differences, which compares the child's abilities in one area with a child's abilities in other areas. So the grouping of children is special classes rests on the concept of inter-individual differences, but the instructional procedures for each child are determined by the intra-individual differences, that is, by a child's abilities and disabilities. So now let us proceed to the philosophy of special education programs. The general philosophy of special education is that all people have the ability to learn, regardless of their particular disabilities. The trend in public education has shifted from isolating special education students in separate classrooms to mainstreaming them in the regular classroom for at least part of the day. So what is most likely the objectives of special education? So the special education staff in conjunction with the classroom teachers or other educational personnel have a commitment to the following objectives, which is first to create an effective climate for earning by sharing all the available information about the child's disability pertinent to the child's performance in educational setting, and to provide and implement program and testing accommodation as a stipulated on the IAP, and to facilitate each student's academic progress and social development by establishing appropriate goals and providing instructions, and to support and act the resource of classroom teachers working with students with special needs. And lastly, to encourage students to be aware of their strengths and weaknesses so that they can be able to become a good advocates for themselves and to other settings. The next slide is about John Dewey in the year 1859 to 1952. According to him, education is life itself. The democratic faith in human equality is belief that every human being, independent of the quality or range of his personal endowment, has the right to the equal opportunity with every other person for development of whatever gift he has. Although Dewey never wrote specifically about disability, his philosophy is sympathetic to special education programs and supplies theoretical and practical supports for inclusive, democratic schooling that actively values all students as the background and ability. While in the Philippines, the growth of special education had been relatively all good supports all these years. Both the government and non-government organizations and stakeholders in response to the needs and challenge of the times. The level of awareness of both the government and the private sector in providing equal opportunities in children with special needs have considerably increased. One positive development in special education in their implementation of Republic Act 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, as act providing for the rehabilitations, self-development, and self-reliance of disabled persons and their integration into the mainstream of society. In the support of this legislation, the Department of Education has directed all school divisions in the country to establish special education centers to help provide effective delivery of special education services nationwide. Although special education in the country started 94 years ago, The many years respects the demand and needs of this program have not changed. The advent of the 21st century requires new perspective and direction in special education to meet the needs of the disadvantaged children against the persistent challenges and demands of the new millennialism.
Good day everyone. I am the next reporter and we are going to tackle about the inclusion program. But before that, let us know first what is the term inclusion. The term inclusion captures, in one word, an all-embracing societal ideology regarding individuals with disabilities and special education. Inclusion secure opportunities for students with disabilities to learn alongside their non-disabled peers in general education. Inclusion is an educational approach and philosophy that provides all students with community membership and greater opportunities for academic and social achievement. So, inclusion program embraces diversity. Inclusion program is for all the students, able or not. They are given opportunity to be part of education. This inclusion program is an educational approach in which it respects one's differences. This is open for all, as this will provide greater opportunities for all the students in academic and even in social achievement. What is inclusive education? Inclusive education is a new approach towards educating the children with disability and learning difficulties with that normal ones with the same roof. It is also defined as a learning environment that promotes the full personal, academic, and professional development of all the learners irrespective of race, class, color, gender, disability, sexual preference, learning styles, and language. Inclusive education is for all. There is fairness in this program. Normal learners or disabled learners. They are all learning in the same roof. They are learning in one environment regardless of one's differences. All the students are given a chance to learn. Inclusive education as defined by NCF 2005. Disability is a social responsibility. So as we all know, there are disabled person, and as part of this program, disability is a social responsibility. It is their responsibility to educate those disabled person. Failure of a child is an indication of failure of school. So it is because schools are a great foundation for learning. So they have a vital role towards the learning or the knowledge that they're teaching to the students. Remove social, physical, and attitudinal barriers. Learning together is beneficial for every child and inculcate mutual respect and interdependence. Aims and objectives of inclusive education. First is education for all, protection of rights, identification of skills. So in identification of skills, I guess this is attainable because in the process of teaching and learning, they could be able to recognize or identify their skills. Development of social consciousness to prepare for new challenges. So it is their aim to prepare those learners as they are expected to encounter different challenges during the learning process. So through this program, they are given a chance for a great preparations. Development of brotherhood. So of course, there is a development of brotherhood since they are meeting different kinds of people or learners in the school. And to improve quality of education, it is really the aim of this program to improve the quality of education, and through that there is an assurance of growth and progress of students' learning. Principles of inclusive education. So first is no discrimination with students. Of course, there is no discrimination with students, so there is fairness, no discrimination in the context. No one is being bullied since they're always protected by their own rights. Equal educational opportunity to all. So equal educational opportunity to all. Yes, it is equal because everyone is given the opportunity as part of the inclusion program. School adapt to the needs of students. Equal educational benefits for all students. The students' views are listened to and taken seriously. All the concerns are being taken seriously. Individual differences between students are a source of richness and diversity and not a problem. Need and importance of inclusive education. So, to fulfill the constitutional responsibilities to enable children to stay with their families, for the development of healthy citizens, for achieving the universalization. So, universalization means learners there are being united and developing feeling of self-respect. So there is a development of self-respect because they are being treated equally in one classroom or in the learning environment. For social equality, it points out to one's differences regardless of one's culture. Everyone has equal opportunities and self-reliant. So next we have the mapping of those children that belongs or children who can be part of the inclusive education. So first is we have the street children, the children of migrant laborers, children with HIV/AIDS and other chronic illness, girls living in difficult circumstances, children with disabilities, working children, children in remote tribal areas, and all other children. So these are the scope of inclusive education, which is a well thought out inclusive education program has the potential to meet the diverse educational needs of all children. So through this program, these children are able to meet their educational needs. Process of inclusive education. So first is awareness raising on the right to education for all children of local, regional, and national levels. So to bring awareness to the communities and societies that everyone has the right to education. Parent support to understand the children's educational, social, and sometimes medical needs. So to be a supportive parent, a parent who can understand their educational, social, and medical needs. Third one is the policies, developing inclusive education policies, revising existing policies. To have an inclusive, to have a policy to provide guidance and efficiency and to clarify on how the specific program operates. And teacher training programs to promote inclusive practices. So since teachers has a vital role on a student's learning process, teachers must undergo a proper training. And lastly, specialized techniques for teaching children with a range of learning and communication styles and needs. And so as a teacher, it is important for you to have specialized techniques for you to be able to meet the needs and interests of your students. Role of teacher, interaction with family. So interacting or communicating with the family or parents are important for them to know the behavior of their child in the school. Next is to be able to solve the problem, to develop new learning strategies, to be able to develop self-confidence, and to be able to provide special facilities, to be able to look after their personal needs. So as we all know, students have different needs in the process of learning, so it is the role of the teacher to look for that and to be able to recognize their hidden talents and to inculcate positive attitude and the able-bodied children. So to inculcate, it is your role to as a teacher to teach them a positive attitude towards others, not just their to the elders, but also to their peers and to their classmates. Thank you for listening. The next reporter is Miss Heaven Bacarisas with her topic, indigenization and contextualization of the curriculum.
Indigenization and contextualization of the curriculum. So what is indigenization and contextualization of the curriculum? Let us now start the contextualization. Contextualization refers to the educational process of relating the curriculum to a particular setting, situation, or area of application to make the competencies relevant, meaningful, and useful to all learners. Process of lessons in a meaningful and relevant context based on previous experiences and real-life situations. Contextualization falls on the idea that students learn best when experience in the classroom have meanings and relevance in their lives. Things students do and associated with them or the learning that would last forever. The degree of contextualization may be described and distinguished into the following, which is localization and indigenization. Localization refers to the process of relating learning content specified in the curriculum to local information and materials in the learner's community. Examples of localization. Number one, examples used in lessons start with those in the locality. Number two, local materials are used as often as possible in making instructional materials number. Number three, local stories are used in the language learning areas. What is indigenization? It refers to the process of enhancing curriculum competencies, educational resources, and teaching learning processes in relation to the biogeographical, historical, and sociocultural context of the learner's community. Indigenization may also involve the enhancement of curriculum framework, curriculum design, and learning standards of subject areas guided by the standards and principles adhered to by the national curriculum. Indigenization is a multi-stage institutional initiative that supports societal reconciliation, an intentional, culturally sensitive, and appropriate approach to adding indigenous ideas, concepts, and practices into the curricula when or where it is appropriate. Examples of indigenizations are reading and dramatizing the life of local heroes, discussing local environmental problems, and staging a debate on the local issues. From the question, why is indigenization important? Embracing indigenization by practicing indigenized way of knowing, learning, teaching, instructing, and training ensures that students and teachers, whether indigenous or non-indigenous people, are able to benefit from education in a culturally sensitive manner that utilizes, promotes, and enhances awareness of indigenous traditions. So that's for today, and I hope that you learned something from the learning resources and instructional accommodation.